I found my wife's affair with our lawyer, and now she's claiming half our $1.2 million estate, despite me catching them hiding thousands in cash and forging documents to steal everything I worked for. Hello everyone. Dear listeners, please share your thoughts in the comments section below. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Now, let's begin the video. Using a throwaway for obvious reasons with certain specifics modified to preserve anonymity. I never thought I'd find myself in a situation like this, but here I am, sitting in my own living room, staring at a pile of stolen cash, a forged document, and trying to process how everything I built with my wife, Lisa, has turned into a total nightmare. The craziest part, I caught her cheating on me with our lawyer, Mark. Yeah, the guy I trusted to handle our legal affairs while Lisa was out pretending to be the perfect wife. It all started about 3 months ago when I noticed Lisa acting a little off. She'd be more secretive with her phone, locking it whenever I'd walk into the room, and I'd catch her deleting messages on occasion. At first, I just thought she was stressed or hiding some surprise birthday plans or something. But then I found the receipt for a hotel stay in her purse, one she swore she hadn't taken. That was weird enough, but I didn't think much of it because she insisted it was a mistake, maybe a gift for a friend or some business thing. Things got stranger when I noticed her withdrawing more money from our joint account. I mean, we're sitting on a $1.2 million estate, and I always handled the finances, but suddenly, she was asking me to sign papers for business investments she supposedly made. I was suspicious, but didn't want to jump to conclusions. Then she started acting more bitchy, snapping at me over small things, and I caught her lying about her whereabouts more than once. She'd say she was out shopping or meeting friends, but I'd find her car parked outside the lawyer's office during working hours. I thought maybe she was just sneaking around with a friend or something innocent, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. One night, I decided to follow her. I was feeling paranoid, sure, but I just wanted to know where she was going. I followed her to a fancy hotel downtown and I saw her going into a room with Mark. My stomach dropped and I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. I stood outside for a few seconds trying to process what I was seeing. She was laughing, obviously comfortable, and I could see the outline of them kissing through the window. That's when I knew she'd been lying about everything. They weren't just working together, they were having sex, probably for months. I didn't confront her that night. Instead, I went home, tried to sleep, but it was impossible. I kept replaying the images in my head, the betrayal hitting me harder than I thought possible. The woman I married, the woman I trusted with everything, was cheating on me with the one person I thought was on my side, Mark, our lawyer. It was a double betrayal, and I was furious. I kept thinking about the money, the estate, everything I'd worked for. How could she do this? How could she lie to my face for so long? I felt so stupid for not seeing the signs earlier, for not noticing how she was quietly siphoning money, forging documents, hiding everything. The worst part, when I finally confronted her the next day, she played innocent. She looked me right in the eyes and told me I was imagining things, that I was paranoid, that she loved me and would never do something like that. She said I was overreacting, that I was jealous and insecure, but I knew better. I had the proof, those stacks of cash hidden in the back of her closet, the forged signatures on papers that should have been mine, the times she lied about her whereabouts. I didn't want to believe it, but the evidence was irrefutable. That day, everything changed. I realized my wife had been lying to me for months, possibly longer. She'd been sneaking around with Mark, stealing money, forging documents, probably planning to run off with as much as she could get her hands on. And I was left sitting here, betrayed, angry, feeling like a fool. I knew I had to do something, but I didn't know what yet. All I knew was that my life was no longer the same, and I was going to have to fight to get what was mine, what I'd worked so hard for. After I saw her with Mark that night, everything in my mind shifted. I couldn't sleep, couldn't eat. I kept replaying the scene over and over, trying to find some way to make sense of it all. How could she do this? How could she betray me like that with someone I trusted? I felt a mixture of rage and heartbreak, a burning need to get to the bottom of it all and make her pay for what she'd done. The next morning, I decided I needed to confront her directly. I couldn't keep pretending everything was fine, not anymore. I called her into the study. She was still bitchy, snapping at me for no reason, acting like I was the crazy one. I looked her straight in the eyes and told her I knew about her affair with Mark. Her face twisted into a sneer and she immediately started lying, saying I was imagining things, accusing me of paranoia. She told me, "You're overreacting, Jack. I love you, but you're just insecure. You're making this all up because you're jealous." I just stared at her, feeling my blood boil. I pulled out the evidence I'd gathered, the receipts. The forged documents, the bank statements showing thousands in cash she'd hidden. I laid it all out on the table. Her face went pale, then she started crying, but I knew her tears were fake. She was just trying to manipulate me, to turn things around so I'd feel guilty or confused. That's when I realized I couldn't trust her anymore. I'd been played for a fool. I felt a surge of anger and I told her she was done. I was going to get to the bottom of everything and I wasn't going to let her walk away with my money or my life. She kept insisting she loved me, that I was crazy, that Mark was just helping her with some legal stuff, but I knew better. I knew she'd been lying from the start. The thought of her lying to me, cheating on me, stealing from me, it was like a knife in my chest. I decided I needed to get legal advice. I called my brother, he's a lawyer, and explained everything. He told me to gather every piece of evidence, to document everything, and to prepare for a fight. I started digging through our financial records, trying to find out how much she'd stolen and how far her plans went. I found multiple bank accounts I didn't even know about, all in her name, with thousands of dollars deposited in cash. She'd been hiding money, forging signatures, even creating fake documents to claim ownership of assets I'd earned. That's when I discovered she'd been working with Mark to forge documents transferring ownership of parts of our estate, things I'd built over the years. I found a fake contract that gave her control over a significant portion of our assets, and I knew she'd been planning to run off with everything. I was furious. This wasn't just a betrayal, it was theft on a massive scale. My head was spinning. I felt sick, but I also felt a strange sense of clarity. I knew I had to act fast. I couldn't let her get away with this. I started drafting a plan, one that would expose her, stop her from draining our estate further, and make sure she paid for what she'd done. I decided I'd confront her again, but this time with a lawyer present, and I'd also start the process of freezing her accounts and filing for a legal separation. That night I sat alone in the dark, thinking about everything. How I trusted her, how I'd built a life with her, and now it was all falling apart. I felt betrayed, humiliated, and furious. But I also knew I couldn't let her win. I had to fight for what was rightfully mine. I couldn't let her steal my hard-earned money and everything I'd worked for. She might be manipulative, but I had the evidence now. I was going to make sure she paid for every lie, every betrayal, and every dollar she'd stolen. The next few days were a blur of planning and gathering more evidence. I couldn't sleep much, and every time I closed my eyes, I saw her face, smug, lying, cheating. My trust in her was shattered, and I knew I had to act fast before she managed to drain more from our accounts or hide even more of her plans. I contacted a private investigator I knew from work, just to confirm some of my suspicions and to get a clearer picture of her dealings. Turns out, she'd been funneling money into secret accounts, moving cash around, and even forging signatures on legal documents to transfer assets into her name. The PI confirmed that she'd been working with Mark on some of this. I was furious. I had all the proof I needed now, enough to get a court to freeze her accounts and start an official investigation. I also started working with my lawyer on the legal side, drafting a separation agreement that included a detailed account of her betrayal, theft, and the forged documents. I knew this was about more than just money. It was about justice, about making her pay for what she'd done. One thing I wasn't prepared for was her reaction when I confronted her again with the new evidence. That woman, Lisa, she's a master liar. When I told her I was filing for divorce and taking legal action, she flipped out, said I was ruining her life, that I was overreacting, and that I had no right to take her money. She even tried to manipulate me, crying and begging, claiming she'd only been trying to save the marriage. that Mark was just helping her, and that she'd never cheat or steal from me. But I saw right through her. Her words were hollow, her tears fake. I knew she was already planning her next move. She started throwing accusations at me, saying I was controlling and paranoid, that I'd been abusing her trust. She claimed that I'd been suspicious for no reason and that I was just jealous, like I was the villain here. I couldn't believe the audacity. She was the one cheating, forging documents, hiding money, and scheming with Mark, and now she was trying to turn it around, make me the bad guy. I felt sick to my stomach. There was a moment when she looked at me with this bitchy smirk, and I realized how far gone she was. She didn't care about our marriage. She only cared about herself, her money, her freedom, her new life with Mark. I was furious, but I also felt a deep sadness. I'd loved her once. I'd trusted her with everything. Now all I had left was a pile of lies and betrayal. That night I made the decision to cut all ties. I called my lawyer, told him I wanted to move forward with the divorce, and asked him to start the process of freezing her accounts and investigating her finances thoroughly. I also told him I wanted to file for full custody of our assets and to prevent her from stealing more. I knew this wasn't going to be easy. She's manipulative, bitchy, and used to getting her way. But I was done playing nice. I'd been patient, but now I was fighting back. As I sat there, staring at the documents and the evidence I'd gathered, I felt a mixture of relief and dread. Relief that I finally had proof and a plan, and dread because I knew the fight was only beginning. She'd try to spin things, manipulate the system, maybe even try to turn the courts against me, but I was determined. I'd worked too hard, built too much to let her walk away with my estate and everything I'd earned. I realized I had to be ready for whatever was coming next. She was a manipulative, lying bitch, and she wasn't going down without a fight. But I was prepared now. I'd fight for what was mine, for justice, and to make sure she paid for her betrayal. I didn't know how this was going to end, but I knew one thing: I wouldn't let her get away with it. Not this time. The legal process moved faster than I expected once I handed everything over to my lawyer. The evidence was solid: bank statements, forged documents, the receipts, and the testimonies from the pie. It was enough to get a court order to freeze her accounts and start an official investigation into her finances. Still, I knew Lisa wouldn't go down quietly. She's manipulative and bitchy, and she's used to getting her way. I could see her trying to spin stories, trying to manipulate the system, and I had to stay one step ahead. She started throwing her tantrums the moment I told her about the court orders. The day I served her the papers, she flipped out, calling me every name in the book, claiming I was trying to ruin her, that I was jealous and paranoid. She even dared to say I was controlling her, which made me laugh bitterly. Control. She's the one sneaking around with Mark, forging documents and stealing money. She had the nerve to call me insecure, like I was the crazy one, but I knew better. I had all the proof and I was ready to fight. Her reaction was typical. She started crying, trying to guilt-trip me, saying she loved me and it was all a misunderstanding. I just sat there cold and silent. I knew her game. She's a manipulative bitch and I'd seen through her lies. I told her I wasn't interested in her excuses. I was going after what was rightfully mine. I told her I'd see her in court and I'd make sure she paid for every dollar she stole and every lie she told. Her face twisted with fury, but I didn't care. I was done being her pawn. Over the next week, she tried to turn the tables. She brought up old memories, called me controlling, accused me of cheating myself, hypocrite. She even tried to claim that I'd been abusive, which was laughable. I had never laid a finger on her, and suddenly she's painting herself as the victim. Yeah, right. She's the one cheating, forging, stealing, and now she's playing the victim. It was disgusting. I couldn't believe how she was trying to manipulate everyone around her, from her friends to the court. Meanwhile, I kept my focus on the legal side. I worked with my lawyer to prepare for the upcoming hearing. We filed for divorce and asked the court to assign an independent accountant to audit her finances. I wanted every hidden dollar accounted for. I also requested a protective order so she couldn't access any more of our shared assets. I was determined to shut her down and make her pay for everything she'd done. I knew she'd try to stall or manipulate the process, but I was ready. One afternoon, she showed up at my house unexpectedly. She looked terrible, pale, angry, and bitchy as hell. She demanded to know what I was doing, accused me of violating her rights, and said I was destroying her life. I told her she had no one to blame but herself. I pointed out the evidence, told her she'd been caught red-handed, and that her lies weren't going to save her. She yelled, called me a controlling bastard, and stormed out, threatening to ruin me. I just watched her leave, feeling a strange mixture of satisfaction and disgust. I knew she wasn't going to take this lying down. She's a bitchy, manipulative woman who's used to getting her way. But I also knew she was cornered now. The court was on my side, and I had the evidence to back me up. I felt a strange sense of relief, but I also felt the weight of what was to come. This wasn't over yet. She'd fight, she'd lie, she'd manipulate, but I was ready. I wasn't going to let her steal my money, my estate, or my life without a fight. I had everything to lose, and I was determined not to lose it. The court date finally arrived, and I could feel the tension building inside me. I knew Lisa would pull out all the stops. She's a bitchy, manipulative woman who's used to twisting things her way, and I had to be prepared for her worst. When I walked into the courtroom, I saw her sitting there, looking confident but hollow. She thought she had all her lies ready, all her manipulations lined up, but I had the evidence. I knew I did. The hearing was intense. Lisa's lawyer tried to argue that I was controlling and paranoid, that she deserved half the estate because she'd been a good wife, and that I was overreacting. But my lawyer shredded her stories apart. We presented the forged documents, the bank statements, the receipts, and the testimony from the pie. It was all irrefutable. I saw Lisa's face turn pale as the judge examined the evidence. Her bitchy smirk faltered, and I could tell she was realizing she was losing her grip. She tried to claim she was innocent, that she never meant to hurt me, that it was all just a misunderstanding. But I had enough. I stood up and told the court about her affair with Mark, how she'd been lying, forging documents, and stealing money. I explained how she'd been planning to run off with our assets, how she'd been manipulating everyone around her. I laid it all out, every lie, every betrayal. I could see her trying to interrupt, trying to spin her web of lies, but the judge wasn't having it. When the judge finally made his ruling, it was a blow to her. He ordered the immediate unfreezing of our assets, appointed an independent accountant to audit her finances, and awarded me full custody of our estate, everything I'd earned, everything I'd worked for. Lisa's face twisted with rage, and she started yelling that this was unfair, that she deserved half, that I was ruining her life. But the judge didn't buy her lies. He told her she was to return all stolen money, and if she failed to do so, further legal action would be taken. After the court session, Lisa stormed out, fuming, bitching, threatening to ruin me. But I felt a strange sense of relief. The court had seen through her manipulations, and justice was starting to be served. I knew she'd try to fight back, to manipulate the situation further, but I had the evidence and the court's backing. I was finally getting some closure, some peace of mind. In the days that followed, I began the process of rebuilding. I started working with financial advisors to secure my assets, and I moved out of the house Lisa and I shared. It was a painful process, but I knew I had to do it. I had learned a lot about trust, betrayal, and how dangerous manipulative women like Lisa can be. I realized that no matter how much you love someone, if they're willing to lie, cheat, forge documents, and steal from you, they're not worth the pain. I also learned that sometimes justice takes time, but with patience, evidence, and a good legal team, you can fight back. I don't regret standing up for myself, even if it cost me a lot emotionally. The betrayal cut deep, but I came out of it knowing I'd done the right thing. And I won't let her or anyone else take what I've built again. That's the lesson I'll carry forward. Would you like me to continue with the final part? Now that everything's settled, well, as much as it can be, I find myself sitting here reflecting on the chaos, the betrayal, and what it all taught me. I never thought I'd go through something like this, especially not with someone I loved and trusted for so many years. Lisa was a bitchy, manipulative woman who thought she could hide her lies behind pretty words and fake tears. She lied about everything, about her affair, about the money, about her so-called innocence. She tried to spin her web of deception until the very end, but the court saw through her. The evidence was too strong and justice was served. Looking back, I realize how much I was blinded by love and trust. I ignored the signs, her secretive behavior, the disappearing cash, the forged documents. I was too comfortable, too trusting, and that cost me dearly. But I also learned that being cautious and vigilant can save you from losing everything. I learned that manipulative people like Lisa will do anything to get what they want: money, control, freedom, and that you have to be prepared to fight back with everything you've got. The emotional toll was heavy. I was angry, humiliated, hurt, and betrayed, but I also felt a strange sense of relief. I finally took control of my life again. I started rebuilding my finances, my confidence, and my sense of self. I realized I don't need someone like Lisa, someone who lies, cheats, and manipulates, to be happy. I've learned to trust my instincts more and to never ignore the red flags. Most importantly, I've come to understand that justice isn't always quick or easy, but it's worth fighting for. The court's decision gave me a sense of closure, and I can finally start moving on. I know I'll be cautious in the future, and I'll never let anyone manipulate me the way Lisa did. I hope my story serves as a warning. Watch out for the bitchy, manipulative types, especially when money and trust are involved. They're dangerous, and they'll do anything to get what they want. Finally, I want to say that I'm grateful for the lessons. I've learned about resilience, about standing up for myself, and about the importance of protecting what's yours. I don't regret fighting for what's right. I've come out stronger, wiser, and more cautious. And I'll never let betrayal like this happen to me again. That's the end of my story. Thanks for listening.